Inspiring Black CEO exposes bank's bias. 10 minutes later, transforms the entire branch team. Jasmine Carter took a deep breath as she stepped through the sleek glass doors of the 10th Street branch, her hometown bank. Just a few years ago, they had turned down her requests for funding proposals aimed at uplifting the community she loved. Today, she felt the ghost of that rejection whispering doubts into her mind. Could she turn those feelings of inadequacy into something constructive? The bank employees shuffled around her, exchanging dismissive glances and hushed whispers that felt heavy with skepticism. She felt small, her heart racing as the familiar tide of doubt threatened to pull her back under. As she walked towards the conference room, the weight of systemic injustice bore down on her shoulders, squeezing her chest tight. How many times had she faced this indifference, the very air seeming to remind her of the battles against bias and inequality her grandmother had fought? A pain struck her heart. Did the team in this bank know what their actions implied? Was it even possible to evoke empathy in a place so entrenched in hierarchy and privilege? Jasmine gripped the folder filled with her research tighter as a tether to her resolve. The feelings surging within her, defiance, anger, determination, were in constant conflict. She could almost taste the frustration, like bile rising in her throat. Would they even listen? Or was this another symbolic check in a box where she'd be marginalized, the truth dismissed because it stung too much? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Jasmine's voice rang in the otherwise quiet room, momentarily distracting her from the storm brewing inside. She began her presentation, recounting stories of families denied opportunities because of ingrained biases. For a moment, the room fell into a hush. She was saying something important, something that needed to be heard. But skepticism still lingered behind narrowed eyes. Just as she felt her resolve falter, Mr. Harrington, the elderly branch manager, stood up, a tremor coursing through his hands. He shared a haunting story of his own past, battles fought and lost against biases that haunted him. The vulnerability uncoiled the tension. Yet another layer of conflict arose within Jasmine. Was he sincere? Did he represent a genuine shift? Or was this just lip service, a temporary blip in the company's deep-seated culture? An ironic smile flashed across her lips, masking the storm within. The path to change was fraught with complexity. She could feel the walls of apathy close in. Could she really inspire a transformation? The suffocating truth weighed heavily in the air. The clock ticked down, the end of the presentation near. Jasmine stood anchored in uncertainty, grappling with that lingering question. Could this man's confession lead to a change that would transcend the biases right in front of her? As the session came to a close, she faced an unsettling realization. It was just the beginning of an arduous journey. Jasmine walked out of the conference room with a mix of hope and trepidation curling in her stomach. The emotional whiplash between Mr. Harrington's unexpected vulnerability and her own skepticism left her reeling. She had entered with the intention of fostering change, but navigating the entrenched attitudes of the bank staff proved to be a complicated web to untangle. How was she supposed to quantify success in such a deeply rooted atmosphere of resistance? Her mind churned with possibilities as she settled in her office, the faint sound of murmurs from the hallway breaking her focus. The city outside her window buzzed with life, each face in the crowd a reminder of the community she aspired to empower. Yet, Amidst that pulse of energy, she felt a growing sense of isolation. Was she truly capable of effecting change in this rigid structure? Checklists of potential strategies replayed in her mind, yet they felt abstract compared to the raw emotions roiling within her. Jasmine realized that numbers and proposals would not suffice. She needed to connect not only with the data, but also with the human side of the issue. How could she create a bridge between the disparate experiences of those in the bank and the families whose dreams remained out of reach? Days passed, and with them came a surge of inspiration. It became clear to her that while the bank's culture seemed impenetrable, small shifts could yield significant results. She organized a series of informal lunch meetings to allow employees to share personal stories related to their views on community engagement. Humanize the statistics, she reminded herself. The first session gathered a small group, and to her surprise, it was filled with genuine curiosity and subdued eagerness among a few employees. But her heart sank again when she noticed the apathy in others. It reinforced the internal battle she had long fought, those feelings of doubt creeping back in. Had she overestimated their willingness to engage? Drawing from her own experiences, Jasmine crafted a compelling narrative, one that framed their involvement as an opportunity for greater social responsibility rather than a bureaucratic obligation. She passionately reminded them of the power each individual held to transform their environment. The energy in the room heightened as conversations sparked. One by one, employees began sharing personal stories, uncovering layers of experience that revealed connections to the issues Jasmine had spotlighted. There were hesitant laughs, shared gasps, and even tears from unexpected corners of the room. Jasmine listened, nodding and affirming their feelings, processing this cathartic moment both inside herself and in the hearts of her colleagues. Yet amidst these breakthroughs, an unsettling question loomed. Would their willingness to share translate into concrete action? Jasmine felt the weight of responsibility amplifying. As people began to bond through these stories, she knew she had to channel their emotional growth into a cohesive movement. That night, lying in bed, she wrestled with thoughts of what her next move should be. She knew the journey had just begun, but each tiny victory brought with it layers of complexity. The ground beneath her felt unstable, yet there was a promise of change rippling through the air. Jasmine committed herself to pushing through the discomfort, aware that she was not merely fighting for acknowledgement, but was in pursuit of true transformation. Would the next round of meetings consolidate these nascent connections into actionable steps? And how would the bank's upper management respond if they showed resistance to this newfound empathy? There was so much at stake, and the path ahead still shrouded in ambiguity. Just when Jasmine thought she might find clarity, a swirling uncertainty whisked through her, leaving her wondering what unforeseen challenges lay just beyond the horizon. The time had come to face the consequences of her endeavor head-on. The next morning arrived too quickly, the sunrise casting a tentative glow over Jasmine's cluttered desk. The remnants of last night's reflections sat heavy on her. She could feel the disquieting anticipation buzzing around her like static. Each tick of the clock served as a reminder that today was not merely a repetition of past meetings, but a pivotal juncture teeming with possibilities and undeniable risks. As she moved through her morning routine, a thought nagged at her. How could she draw concrete actions from this melting pot of newly shared experiences? The idea of a framework began to take shape in her mind. What if she could guide her colleagues with specific goals and commitments based on their conversations? It was a calculated risk, one that could either forge deeper connections or lay bare the fractures within the team. The prospect of enforcing structure seemed daunting. Would they feel trapped or empowered? Upon arriving at the office, Jasmine's first order of business was to meet with her immediate team. They had already embraced the idea of community engagement, but now it was essential to establish focal points for their collaboration. Jasmine paced the room as she laid out her thoughts. Small, measurable initiatives that the staff could undertake individually, transforming personal stories into action that resonated within the community. "Each of you," she began, her voice gaining strength, "has unique experiences that can be powerful tools for change. What if we created personal engagement goals based on the stories we've shared? It would allow us to transform our insights into actionable steps towards fostering a more inclusive environment." The room was silent, her proposition hanging in the air like a delicate strand. To her relief, several team members began to respond with enthusiasm. Ideas ignited around the room like wildfire, and she felt an exhilarating rush at the prospect of their collective focus crystallizing into tangible actions. But alongside that rush, an unsettling thought gnawed at her. What if the inherent biases they had been working to unveil disrupted this momentum? To tackle that concern, Jasmine scheduled a follow-up discussion with upper management, determined to advocate for their newly developed engagement framework. "They need to hear us," she considered, weighing the potential pushback against the necessity of their support. The stakes were high. It was crucial for upper management to see the value in embracing a more empathetic approach without trivializing the significance of the initiative. As she prepared her points for the meeting, Jasmine internalized her previous experiences, dissecting her own potential weaknesses. Would her direct confrontation of bias receive the respect it deserved? The thought unsettled her, edging back toward doubt. What she had deemed as an opportunity could devolve into a confrontation if they remained resistant to the growth she was advocating. The clock inched closer to the hour of her meeting. Jasmine took a deep breath, reminding herself that discomfort often accompanied significant change. Her heart pounded as she entered the conference room, meeting the eyes of the executives, each gaze reflecting layers of agency and authority. "Empathy is not a weakness," she began, grounding herself in conviction. "It is a strength we can harness to redefine our connection with the community we serve." As she spoke, Jasmine remained acutely aware of the tension rippling through the room. Would her words resonate, dismantling long-held barriers? The atmosphere cracked with unspoken tension. What unsettling truths would emerge from their discussion, and how would she respond to their potential skepticism? Jasmine prepared for confrontation, knowing that the moment had come for her to advocate for her vision while navigating through the minefield of institutional bias. Could she hold her ground amidst the pushback she anticipated? The question loomed large, forcing her to confront not just the external resistance, but also the internal fears that plagued her every move. Was she ready for the revelation that awaited her on the other side of this critical juncture? Determined, Jasmine engaged with her audience, sensing the winds of change swirling around her, both exhilarating and frightening. If today's discussion shifted the paradigm, would she emerge empowered or fractured? The stakes had never been higher. The conversation began, and Jasmine felt the weight of every gaze upon her. The executives listened, but their inscrutable expressions only deepened her anxiety. She pressed on, recalibrating the narrative toward mutual benefit. "By adopting this framework," she asserted, "we can not only support our community, but also enhance our team's efficiency and morale. This is a win-win." Her statements landed with varying degrees of acceptance, yet Jasmine could sense resistance swirling, particularly from Kevin, the finance director. He crossed his arms, posture rigid, as if waiting for an opportunity to pounce. She had anticipated pushback from him. His well-honed skepticism was known throughout the office. "What makes you think our team is prepared for such shifts? We've always operated within established boundaries," he replied, his voice rich with condescension. The room held its breath, her heart racing in response. Was this her cue to retreat or to double down? "I understand change is daunting," she replied, pushing through the flutter of doubt, "but growth requires stepping outside our comfort zones." Her conviction ignited a flicker of interest among other executives, a slight nod from Sarah, the HR director, silently encouraging her onward. Yet Kevin remained unmoved. "And what if our traditional methods are sufficient?" he countered, eyes narrowing. "Involving personal stories could blur professional lines." "Blurring lines may be exactly what we need, Kevin," she exclaimed, the indignation spilling over. The intensity of fear morphed into boldness, transforming her anxiety into a tool of persuasion. The discomfort of her position now felt strangely empowering. Research shows that empathy enhances workplace collaboration. It's not about losing professionalism, it's about increasing connection. Our work shouldn't feel like a disconnect from the very community we serve. A brief silence enveloped them, the tension a tangible force. She could feel her pulse quicken as she braced for possible fallout. Would this be seen as insubordination or as a heartfelt plea for a necessary overhaul? Kevin's expression shifted, a faint flicker of acknowledgement breaking through. Perhaps he was contemplating the foundations of his own biases. But before she could relish her moment, he volleyed another question. What if some stories don't resonate with our business goals? What if they detract from productivity? Jasmine's resolve sharpened. "Then we measure them, refine our approach and adapt," she responded, her tone unwavering. "We have to be brave enough to explore what our colleagues can bring to the table beyond mere numbers. Isn't that part of evolving as a company?" This time, an unexpected ally emerged. Sarah interjected, "What Jasmine is proposing could indeed provide us with a unique angle. A more engaged and connected team could reflect positively in our reports." Seeing cracks in Kevin's fortress, Jasmine pressed the advantage. "If we want to shift perception and results, we must first understand ourselves and each other. This commitment could be the key to refining our corporate objective." Even as they debated, Jasmine's mind flickered with unresolved doubts. She felt moments of clarity undermine her own narratives, the possibility that she might indeed be underestimating how deeply ingrained biases ran in their culture. What if this dialogue exposed not just external obstacles, but internal inadequacies in her own approach? Jasmine confronted the spectre of uncertainty. Had she done enough to prepare herself and her team for the backlash she anticipated? As discussion ensued, Jasmine noticed Kevin's posture relax, the storm clouds receding slightly from the conference table. Yet with progress came an uneasiness, a sense that the real challenge lay ahead, beyond words. Transitioning theory into practice would be an entirely different battle. The meeting gradually shifted in tone, resistance had softened, and fresh ideas emerged. But Jasmine could not ignore the foreboding feeling that accompanied each advancement. She was keenly aware that their journey towards true empathy and engagement was merely beginning. As the room buzzed with newfound hope, Jasmine wondered if she was prepared for the next wave of confrontation, convincing the team to dive deeper into their stories and acknowledging the discomfort of exploring biases. Would they follow her lead or falter in the wake of vulnerability? The risk felt heavier now. She needed to align their objectives. But how would she ensure her vision wasn't lost in translation? Would she have the courage to challenge deeper-seated institutional bias that might rear its ugly head in the next meeting? With resolve and a hint of dread, Jasmine braced herself for the inevitable confrontations looming just ahead. In changing minds, how would she change herself? The days that followed the meeting bled into each other, an endless cycle of meetings and documentation. Jasmine's sense of urgency burgeoned. She felt the clock ticking down to her next encounter with the team. Their gradual acceptance felt fragile, like a delicate thread poised to snap under gentle pressure. Navigating the office atmosphere had become a tightrope walk. She sensed a newfound inquisitiveness among her colleagues, but beneath the surface lay unaddressed tensions. As Jasmine strolled the halls, she overheard murmurs about the new direction she proposed. They oscillated between excitement and anxiety, a chaotic blend of hope and skepticism that gnawed at her resolve. One afternoon, she found herself in a small meeting room with Sarah, drafting a plan for the next strategic session. The walls felt confining, each breath a reminder of the weight Jasmine carried. "We have to ensure that everyone feels safe enough to share their stories," she said, her voice firm yet laced with uncertainty. "If we're going to do this, it has to be all in, no half measures." Sarah nodded, her brow furrowed. "I understand that, but what if we inadvertently trigger someone? Personal stories can be deeply nuanced. We can't predict how they will respond." That statement struck Jasmine hard. It was a real concern, one that she had brushed aside too easily in her previous fervor. The prospect of emotional fallout loomed large in her mind. If the initiative went awry, what would that say about her capability as their leader? The fear of becoming a catalyst for discomfort clawed at her stomach. Determined not to let this deter her, Jasmine held on to a thought. Change is a risk. She envisioned herself at the forefront, fostering vulnerability that could either unite or divide. The concept of risk spun in her mind, an unwelcome but necessary companion. "Let's set ground rules for sharing, as well as a way to capture any feedback. This shouldn't just be a monologue," she suggested, her thoughts moving into high gear. "We need to nurture a culture of feedback, not just applause." Sarah's interest peaked, and her eyes lit up. "That could work. We can instill guidelines that reassure everyone they won't be judged for their life experiences." Jasmine felt her heart race, emboldened by the supportive exchange and the potential strategies emerging from the discussion. Perhaps they could turn this overwhelming responsibility into a structured opportunity for growth for all involved. Before she could dwell too long on morning ideas, Kevin strolled into the room, his presence more dominating than she remembered. With arms crossed, he exuded an air of skepticism that compounded Jasmine's internal conflict. "So, are you really going ahead with this storytelling initiative?" he asked, a hint of mocking in his tone. "Yes, we are," she replied, a surprising boldness emerging. "I believe it has the potential to bring us closer as a team." Kevin smirked, the corners of his mouth hinting at superiority. "You think this soft approach will make a difference? Just remember, when the numbers don't add up, it'll be your call to answer." His question curled its way around her. It pricked at her insecurities, and she could feel the old anxieties clawing back to the forefront. Perhaps he was right. Perhaps she was risking too much. But into the silent void where doubt resided, a glimmer of tenacity sparked. "I believe we can have both," Jasmine said, her voice more assertive than she felt. "Empathy can drive productivity and creativity." Kevin leaned closer, eyes narrowing. "You're walking a fine line, Jasmine. Don't mistake sentiment for strategy." The tension stretched, thickening the air around them. Here was the critical moment she had dreaded, the direct conflict she anticipated. Was she prepared to confront this relentless cynicism? Before she could respond, Sarah interjected, her voice buoyant. "What Jasmine proposes has the possibility for remarkable change. We could redefine efficiency, but we need everyone on board." Glancing between the two, Jasmine recognized the opportunity to defend her vision, not just for herself, but for the broader team dynamics. Taking a breath that felt steeped in conviction, she prepared to dive into the battleground of ideologies. As Kevin's gaze hardened, Jasmine wondered if this conversation would forge a stronger advocate or a deeper rift. What if she stumbled, exposing herself as an untested leader? Would the same doubts resurface, undermining the fragile alliances she had begun to cultivate? She clenched her fists, ready to confront not just the doubt in Kevin's eyes, but her own. As the stakes grew higher, she braced herself. Pushing the boundaries was her only option. Would she be able to balance honesty with performance-driven metrics, or would she falter in the face of escalating resistance? The tension coiled tighter around her, a whisper growing louder in her mind. Change was here, and the time had come to fight for it. Jasmine settled deeper into the role of leader, though with every passing moment the fragile underpinnings of her support grew heavier on her skin. The air in the room crackled with implications, fears, and unspoken truths as she locked eyes with Kevin. In this pivotal moment, a keen awareness flickered within her. Whatever she chose now could summon solidarity or isolation. Empathy without metrics is just sentimentality, Kevin reiterated, arms firmly crossed over his chest. The challenge in his voice bounced off the walls, slamming against her tightly coiled energy. Ignoring the abruptness in her chest, she pushed forward, redefining her footing. And productivity without empathy is short-lived. We've seen teams crumble under pressure, but I want us to rise above that. I don't want to lead a group of stressed individuals. I want to inspire a team. There was a subtle shift as Sarah leaned in closer, nodding resolutely. Her affirmation ignited a trail of determination inside Jasmine, pushing aside the gnawing spectre of self-doubt. She glanced over at Kevin, who remained skeptical, but momentarily silent. His lack of retort felt like a small victory, one she intended to leverage. "Let's put this into practice," Jasmine proposed, a quickening confidence threading through her voice. "Let's have a session where we identify our own successes and areas of struggle. If we want to move forward, we can't ignore reality." "And what if they share something too personal?" Kevin countered, his skepticism thickening the air. "You could prepare yourself for a giant redirection. Personal narratives are not weaknesses. They are pathways to understanding," Jasmine countered, her focus narrowing. "We'll create a platform where all voices matter, including yours, but it has to start somewhere, doesn't it?" This bold insistence momentarily caught Kevin off guard, his expression faltering from condescension to curiosity. For a heartbeat, Jasmine sensed a crack in his familiar armor of cynicism. Did she just challenge him? Possibly even shift his perspective? In that blink of realization, a flickering thought crossed her mind. Her actions mattered, not just in this moment, but in every subsequent interaction she had with the team. Navigating the treacherous waters of leadership was less about overcoming obstacles and more about weaving through and with them, fostering a culture where connections could flourish. As the days pressed on, Jasmine refined her approach. She formulated actionable steps, passing through research and insights on emotional intelligence and team dynamics. Information became her ally, something she hungrily consumed to fortify her resolve. Each thought and note propelled her forward, opening her eyes to an innate diligence she had overlooked. She had spent years filtering through her insecurities and testing her limits in a culture that traditionally prioritized numbers over hearts. Now, each piece she assembled was a stride toward her vision. Yet even with this burgeoning determination, doubt lurked unseen. Days turned into nights, blurred in manic scribbles and late-night coffee runs as ideas took shape. With every new strategy, Jasmine grappled with the lingering concern that Kevin's brand of skepticism could still unravel her ambitions, if given the right moment. The next meeting loomed large, the anticipated stage set for unveiling her refined initiative. Anxiety coursed through her veins. Would her colleagues embrace her vision, or would Kevin's doubt linger like a shadow intent on smothering her flame? With each breath, Jasmine formed a silent mantra. This is my choice. She was the architect of her destiny, and she would forge ahead with conviction. The morning of the presentation dawned, bringing an unsettling mix of excitement and terror. She shuffled her notes, paints in vivid colors of hope, poised to illuminate the path ahead. Just as she turned to leave her desk, the office door swung wide. A whisper spilled through the air, tentative yet charged. "Jasmine, can we talk? I found something in the data that might just upend everything you've planned." Jasmine paused, heart racing, her mind reeling. What could that mean? Was her carefully constructed house of cards ready to collapse? The unexpected interruption sent a jolt of anxiety coursing through Jasmine. She turned slowly to face the intruder, Greg, one of the newer analysts, a mix of apprehension and urgency etched on his face. His trembling hands clutched a tablet as if it were a lifeline. "What did you find?" Jasmine asked, her voice steadier than she felt. She stepped towards him, keenly aware of how each word weighed heavily in the evolving dynamics of her leadership. Greg hesitated, glancing back toward the office door, as if he were afraid someone might overhear. "There's a discrepancy in the data we've been analyzing for this quarter. It seems, well, it shows some team members aren't performing up to their potential, but it goes deeper. There's a pattern that suggests bias in assignments." As fear unfurled in Jasmine's gut, she remained focused, the instincts honed by her recent journey, nudging her to remain calm. "Let's sit down and review it together. This might be our chance to confront some hard truths." They relocated to a quieter corner, away from prying eyes. Jasmine observed Greg navigate the data on the tablet, tapping and swiping urgently. The lines and graphs flashed before her, but she found herself reflecting on the deeper implications of what was unfolding. "This isn't just about numbers, is it?" she murmured, her mind racing. "This could reveal biases in our processes. If we expose this, it could protect not only our team dynamics, but also help us foster a more inclusive environment." Greg nodded, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly as her words seemed to validate his instincts. It dawned on Jasmine that this moment was as pivotal as the previous meeting. It was more than about tactics. It could challenge the broader culture within their workplace. Yet here lay the heart of her dilemma. Would confronting bias and inequity risk further alienating her already hesitant team? Recalling Kevin's earlier skepticism, doubt began to gnaw at her resolve once more. If they faced backlash, could her leadership withstand the storm? "Jasmine," Greg ventured cautiously, "if we bring this to light, it might disrupt our team. But isn't it worth considering the risk if it can change outcomes for everyone?" "Change never comes without risk," she replied, steeling herself. "But we must prepare for the repercussions. If this is done right, it could unify our purpose." As they delved deeper into the data, all Jasmine could think was how this revelation could transform her planned session. Her vision to inspire her team had just been amplified. It now intertwined with the urgent need for honesty and transparency. When the scheduled time for the meeting finally arrived, tension taut like a bowstring was palpable in the room. The team gathered, their faces revealing various degrees of concern and anticipation. Jasmine felt her earlier nerves resurface amidst this charged atmosphere, but she fought back, grounding herself in her newfound knowledge. Holding Greg's findings close to her heart, she began her presentation. "Today, we're not just discussing achievements and struggles, we're also confronting the data that shapes our environment. We need to examine how biases can inadvertently cloud our judgment and impact our outcomes in ways we had not previously considered." As she spoke, Jasmine sensed a swirling blend of defiance and vulnerability from her team. She could see Kevin's expression morph, his arms uncrossing, skepticism flickering amidst curiosity. The energy in the room electrified her spirit. This wasn't just another meeting, it was an opening, a chance to redefine the narrative. Then suddenly, she felt the shift. Would this knowledge forge the connection she craved, or would it provoke division? The stakes felt impossibly high, the weight of uncertainty heavier than ever. "Together, we will dive deep into these findings. But I need honesty from every one of you," she implored. "For us to truly understand and appreciate our individual contributions, we must face these issues head-on." The moment hung suspended in the air, a pin-drop silence. Jasmine felt raw determination surge within her. But as murmurs began to ripple among the team, Kevin's voice cut through the stillness. "Are we really ready to tackle this?" he challenged, eyes locked on Jasmine. She inhaled sharply, meeting his gaze. The time had come to face the adversarial truths lingering beneath the surface. Could she rally them around accountability and transformation? As Jasmine steadied herself to respond, the weight of leadership pressed down, urging her toward an inevitable confrontation. The turning point was here. The follow-through would define her path. Would it inspire change or plunge her deeper into conflict? The air hung heavy as Jasmine took a deep breath, the words teetering on her lips. "Yes, Kevin," she said finally, her voice unwavering. "We are ready. Change demands courage, and courage starts with grappling with our realities." She could feel the mixed emotions rolling off her team, a mix of fear, curiosity, and a faint glimmer of hope. People shifted uncomfortably in their seats, the unspoken question lingering. What would happen next? Jasmine knew this was no longer just a presentation. It was a catalyst for change, an invitation to open the floodgates of vulnerability and accountability. "Let's take a closer look at the data," she said, tapping the tablet with newfound determination. The graphs illuminated significant discrepancies in performance metrics divided along lines of assignment distribution. As Jasmine highlighted the patterns of bias, a palpable shift occurred in the atmosphere. She saw nods of recognition, some looks of disbelief, and a few frowns of concern. Jasmine pressed on. "This analysis speaks volumes about how we assign work based on assumptions rather than individual capacity or potential. It's not just data, it's a reflection of our practices." Kevin's brow furrowed, his facade of skepticism beginning to crack. "So, what are we supposed to do? We could lose valuable team members or worse, face pushback from higher management," he challenged, his tone reeking of concern. "True, but we also risk losing our integrity by ignoring these disparities," Jasmine shot back, emboldened by the resonance of her earlier words. "This is about creating a workplace that values all contributions. If future conflicts arise, they'll be about driving this change, not about the biases we perpetuate." The discussion evolved quickly, and the energy shifted from apprehension to engagement. Murmurs turned into voices of agreement and dissent, which Jasmine welcomed. They needed to voice their concerns, to embrace discomfort together. "All right," Jasmine said, shifting the conversation from pitfalls to possibilities. "What if we forge a path forward using this data? What if we could create fairer distribution models for projects and transparent feedback loops?" Ideas began to flow, and Jasmine felt a sense of empowerment grow within her. She hadn't just stirred the pot, she had ignited a wildfire of collective ingenuity. As voices rose, she jotted down suggestions, noting the fervor brewing in responses. The more they talked, the more Jasmine saw Kevin transform from reluctant participant to active contributor. A spark ignited behind his eyes, a realization that they were capable of shaping their own narratives. This was what she had hoped for. Her leadership was beginning to inspire genuine collaboration. But then, out of nowhere, a new voice cut through the discussion, one Jasmine knew all too well. "This is going too far." Sarah, a senior team member with a reputation for being vocal, chimed in. "What about established hierarchies? Are we just going to toss aside our norms?" Jasmine's heart stilled. This could tear apart the fragile momentum they had built. Encouragement and anxiety warred within her as she locked eyes with Sarah. The pivotal moment had arrived. Confrontation could spell disaster or produce clarity. "Sarah, this is exactly why we're having this conversation. It's essential to scrutinize our norms if they are keeping us from flourishing," Jasmine replied, emotions threading through her words. "Can we move forward by embracing constructive dissent rather than resisting it?" As the room tensed, the challenge was laid bare. Would Sarah seize this chance to engage, or would she retreat into skepticism? Jasmine focused on the rippling undercurrents, aware that this moment could shift the tide, opening channels for deeper connections, or it could lead to further division. She needed to embrace this unpredictably pivotal juncture and rally her team's strengths. But the outcome remained perilously uncertain. Just then, time seemed to stand still. The honesty she sought from her team hung suspended within the silence. Would they emerge from this moment transformed? Or would Jasmine find herself navigating a fracture she had only just begun to bridge? Amidst the clamor of thoughts and fears, one crucial question loomed large. Would they step into the unknown together, or withdraw into the safe but familiar shadows of contention? Jasmine's gaze remained locked with Sarah's, a silent battle of wills. In one tumultuous moment, she felt the weight of leadership settle heavily on her shoulders. This was not just about addressing biases. It was a direct confrontation with a long-standing culture that had stifled open discussion. Weeks of preparing for this moment surged back, but the apprehension was mingled with a fierce determination. "Sarah, I understand the hesitation to challenge established norms. However, standing still while the landscape of our work evolves will only deepen the divide between the innovators and those content to follow outdated paths." Jasmine's tone was tempered, yet firm. She noticed subtle changes in her colleagues' expressions, eyes shifting away from Sarah to catch her confidence, her authenticity. "It's not about discarding our principles, but refining them. True progress necessitates recalibration of how we view contribution and commitment." Jasmine uttered these words with a growing certainty, knowing she was inhabiting the role she had fought hard to embody. Caught off guard by Jasmine's rebuttal, Sarah hesitated, scanning the room for support. Jasmine could sense Sarah's discomfort bubbling under the surface, a stark contrast to the growing energy of the rest. Jasmine seized the moment. "Let's explore these concerns, Sarah. What are you afraid of losing?" The air crackled with tension, and for a heartbeat, Jasmine feared Sarah would deflect or lash out. Instead, Sarah's defenses crumbled just enough to reveal a sliver of vulnerability. What if moving away from hierarchy causes chaos? What if it undermines the experience of those who've worked hard to establish their positions? Jasmine's heart raced. This was the moment of truth. Instead of retreating into a defensive stance, she chose to validate Sarah's fears while reiterating their shared goals. "Your experience is invaluable, Sarah. We can't gain what we desire without recognizing the foundations that have supported us. The key lies in molding those foundations to support every voice in this room." Responses rippled through colleagues. Some nodded, while whispers of agreement punctuated the atmosphere. Jasmine sensed a collective awakening. Transformational leadership wasn't solely about exhortation. It required providing space for individual fears to be addressed while challenging the status quo. Kevin, having absorbed Jasmine's conviction, stepped forward. "Sarah, I think Jasmine makes an important point. We need to courageously address the very biases steering us away from equal contributions." Turning her focus back to Sarah, Jasmine spoke with compassion. "Isn't the ultimate goal to foster a culture that nourishes diverse ideas and talents, where each person, including you, can not only thrive but excel?" Gradually, Sarah conceded, the fight within her deflating. "I understand your point, but the fear remains." Her voice trailed off. "Fear of change?" Jasmine posed gently. "Fear of discomfort? Let's step into that fear. Growth cannot occur in a vacuum." That statement reverberated in the air, transforming the room's tension into a palpable feeling of possibility. It was as though Jasmine had planted a seed. They could witness the obstacles set before them not as insurmountable walls, but as challenges tailored to their potential collective growth. As discussions flowed, dissecting strategies and generating ideas, Jasmine felt acutely aware of her evolving role. She wasn't just a leader, she was becoming a nurturer of a culture that thrived on authentic dialogue and feedback. Time melted away, and as the clock ticked forward, Jasmine caught sight of Sarah softly smiling for the first time during the meeting. It wasn't all resolved, but the dam had broken. Jasmine felt emboldened. Empowerment was spreading like wildfire, yet a nagging sense lingered within her as they transitioned to brainstorming logistics. What would the higher-ups think of their newly challenged ideals? What if Sarah's concerns erupted anew, implemented? The uncertainties hanging above them felt as oppressive as before. But now, more than ever, Jasmine believed in the value of this journey. The awkward, raw moments of conflict were pieces of the mosaic that would define them. Just as her heart quickened with anticipation for the breakthroughs ahead, a new message pinged on her tablet. It was from senior management, requesting her immediate feedback on the meeting. Jasmine's resolve wavered, the implications of their decisions weighing heavily. What would she say? The moment of truth approached, and Jasmine faced a crossroads. Would she maintain her newfound commitment to change, risking her credibility further, or would she pull back to appease authority? Jasmine stood at the precipice of her transformation, gripping her tablet like an anchor while contemplating the repercussions of her leadership. The meeting had bred more than just dialogue. It sprouted a new understanding among her colleagues, one that she could not let dwindle in the light of external scrutiny. The weight of the senior management's message rested heavily on her. This was her chance to solidify the shift she had sparked. She took a deep breath and began typing her response with conviction. Today marked a turning point for our team, one where we confronted biases that have long persisted within our framework. Our discussion revealed a newfound willingness to embrace transparency and collective responsibility. She continued, detailing the data findings Greg had presented, emphasizing the implications for team dynamics and the critical importance of empathy in fostering innovation. Each sentence reflected her growth, her commitment to channeling both passion and pragmatism into her strategy. Submitting the email, she felt an exhilarating rush course through her. Despite the high stakes, Jasmine had answered her own call to action. She was no longer just an advocate in a hierarchy, but a leader steering her colleagues toward a cohesive vision for change. No longer did she flinch at Kevin's skepticism. Instead, she embraced it as a platform for constructive dialogue. Days rolled into weeks as Jasmine and her team worked tirelessly to implement the engagement framework discussed in the meeting. Each step was a balance of vulnerability and boldness. They cultivated an environment where everyone was encouraged to share, where personal stories became tools of connection rather than hindrances to productivity. Jasmine saw her colleagues grow, evolve, and challenge their biases, weaving a rich tapestry of narratives into corporate objectives. As the momentum surged, Jasmine received feedback from her superiors. To her surprise, they showed genuine interest in her proposed engagement methods. "We've noticed significant change in team dynamics and performance," the executive summary read. "Your initiative has shown promise in reshaping internal perceptions." That validation jumped from mere recognition to solid acknowledgement of her competence, solidifying her place as a transformer of culture within the organization. Weeks more passed, and the bank organized a success story session. Jasmine was invited to present her findings and showcase the growth her colleagues had manifested. Standing before the audience, she had never felt more at ease. She spoke not just of numbers, but of personal connections forged and battles fought against inertia. "Transformation doesn't happen overnight," she asserted. "It requires patience, a shared vision, and courage to confront what we've long overlooked." Her voice resonated with confidence, and she felt her narrative empower those who had once doubted her. Jasmine relished in the recognition while humbling herself before those who had supported her in her journey. When the session concluded, her peers and superiors alike recognized her contributions with heartfelt applause, a reality that felt simultaneously surreal and deserved. Jasmine had proven her worth, not just in metrics, but through an unwavering commitment to empathy and growth. As she stepped down from the podium, Jasmine felt a profound sense of fulfillment wash over her. Her heart swelled with pride, a culmination of weeks spent navigating a labyrinth of biases and fears. She had reshaped her professional landscape, carved out a place of influence, and built bridges where once there were walls. She now understood that true transformation stemmed from individual commitment to a unified vision. Her experience reflected an unwavering truth. It isn't about eliminating discomforts, but learning to transcend them with intention. With each success, Jasmine grew not just into a capable leader, but into a beacon for others seeking empowerment amid adversity. She emerged not only as a stronger version of herself, but as a symbol of what decisive, compassionate leadership could achieve. Her journey had come full circle. She entered the 10th Street branch as a hopeful disruptor, and now she left it as a respected leader, transforming skepticism into collaboration with solid confidence. This is the moment for you to embrace your own journey of change. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that will challenge and inspire your journey. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and ensure others discover these transformative tales. Comment your reactions and theories about this conclusive journey of overcoming doubt and bias and how it resonates with your own experiences. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion that demonstrates the power of perseverance and vision. You need to support the channel. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of taking action.